January 26, 1962. Gimpo Airport, Seoul. A woman steps off a plane. She is almost 50 years old. She left Korea as a child. Back then, she was a princess. Now there is no court waiting, no throne, no crown. Then she recognizes the woman who nursed her as an infant. The one who has come home is called Deokhye, the last princess of Korea. Korea today has no ruling royal family, but there was once a family that embodied Korea, the House of Yi. And its end was not simply a change of power. It was not an ending. It was a hollowing out. Japan did not just take the throne from this family. Japan let them go on living, but on foreign terms. What was dangerous about this family was not their power. It was their meaning. And that is why the real story does not begin with a king. It begins with a child. Before Deokhye, there were palaces, court rituals, officials, ancestral ceremonies, an order so old that no one perceived it as politics anymore. The House of Yi was not just a ruling family. It was the frame through which Korea saw itself. But then that frame began to narrow. Japan, Russia, China, Western powers, none of them saw Korea as a quiet court anymore, but as strategic ground. Emperor Gojong tried to assert Korea as a modern empire, a new title, a new symbol, a last attempt to make sovereignty visible. But sometimes a new title is not a sign of strength. It is the last signal before the collapse. In 1910, Japan annexed Korea. The empire disappeared. The court remained. That is exactly where the cruelty was. Japan did not let the royal family vanish. It gave them new places, not at the top of Korea, but at the edge of the Japanese empire. They kept their names, they kept their titles, they kept their ceremonies, but the meaning of those titles now belonged to someone else. Not, "You are gone," but, "You are still here, and we decide what you mean." And 2 years later, a girl was born in the palace. May 25, 1912. Deokhye is born. Her father is Gojong, the former emperor. Her birth does not happen in a free Korean empire, but in a Korea under Japanese rule. She grows up in rooms that still look like a monarchy, but the power is long gone elsewhere. This is the first contradiction of her life. She is of royal blood, but almost every decision about her is made by others. She is still a child, but her life already belongs to politics. In 1925, Japan takes Deokhye to Tokyo, officially for her education. She attends Gakushuin, an elite school closely tied to the aristocracy and the imperial house. In Japan, she is given a Japanese name, a new language, a new environment. But that sounds more harmless than it was. Because for a child from the former Korean imperial family, this journey was not just school. It was removal from the palace, from her mother, from Korea. And this removal was political. In 1929, Deokhye's mother dies. Deokhye is allowed to return to Korea for the funeral. For a moment, she is back where she came from. But even her grief does not fully belong to her. Later accounts say she was not allowed to mourn in the way her rank and Korean court tradition would have required. This is a small moment. No battle, no arrest, no public scandal, only clothing, rituals, rules. But this is exactly where you can see what colonial power means. It does not just control borders, it controls how a person is allowed to mourn their own mother. Then, Deokhye has to go back to Japan, and something inside her begins to break. Around 1930, her mental state deteriorates. Reports speak of sleepwalking. She forgets to eat. She forgets to drink. She moves into the house of her half-brother Yi-un in Tokyo. Yi-un had been taken to Japan as early as 1907. The Crown Prince of Korea had been living in Tokyo ever since. A doctor diagnoses dementia praecox, a term that modern medicine will later call schizophrenia. Here we have to be careful. What is certain, she was ill. What is certain, she was isolated. What is certain, she was living under enormous pressure. What exactly went on inside her? No one can fully know in hindsight. What remains are the stations of her life. A child is taken from Korea. A young woman loses her mother. Her daily life is determined by others. And then they decide about her marriage as well. On May 8, 1931, Deokhye marries So Takayuki, a Japanese aristocrat from the old House of Tsushima. The marriage was arranged by Empress Taimei, the consort of the late Emperor Taisho. It had been decided as early as 1930 and postponed because of Deokhye's illness. As soon as her condition slightly improved, the wedding was set without delay. In Korean memory, this union is often regarded as forced, as another grip of Japan on the body and the name of the princess. What is certain is the political calculation behind this union. A Korean princess, a Japanese nobleman, a marriage in the shadow of occupation. From the outside, it looks like order, integration, perhaps even reconciliation. But for Deokhye, it was not a return to life. It was the next door closing behind her. In 1932, her daughter is born. A year later, in 1933, Deokhye is admitted to a psychiatric clinic for the first time. She will spend many years there, the entire Second World War included. Her daughter is called Masai, in Korean, Jonghae, a child between two worlds, a Korean mother, a Japanese father, a family connected on paper, but drifting apart inside. Deokhye spends years in clinics. The marriage breaks down. In 1955, she is divorced. In August 1956, her daughter disappears in the mountains of Yamanashi Prefecture. She leaves a farewell letter. Her body is never found. This is the deepest cut. First, Deokhye loses her country, then her standing, then her marriage, then her child. And meanwhile, Korea changes without her. In 1945, Japanese rule ends. Korea is liberated. But Deokhye is not yet allowed to return. While she remains in Japan, her homeland is divided. In Seoul, a republic emerges. In the north, a new state emerges. Out of one lost empire, two different states are formed. For an old imperial family, there is no easy place in either of these new orders. The dynasty is a victim of colonial history, but it is also a symbol of the old monarchy, and symbols can be dangerous. Later accounts report that South Korea's first president, Syngman Rhee, considered the return of members of the royal family politically risky. Unrest, nostalgia, rivalry under the sign of the past. Deokhye stays in Japan, no longer a princess in any political sense, but not free either. Then the situation changes. Rhee is no longer in power. Supporters speak up for her. And so, on January 26, 1962, Deokhye returns to Korea. After about 37 years in Japan. Gimpo Airport again. Korean ground again. At the airport, former court ladies are waiting, and her nurse Bayeon Bokdong, who had nursed her as an infant. Bayeon Bokdong bows toward the plane. Deokhye weeps. She is back in the country she had to leave as a child. But nothing is the way it was. The palace is no longer a center of power. The dynasty is no longer a government. The princess is no longer a political figure. She is taken in for medical treatment on the very day of her return. That is the whole tragedy in one image. A royal family does not come back to the throne. It comes back to the hospital. Deokhye later lives again within the grounds of Changdeok Palace. Not as a ruler, as a survivor. Bayeon Bokdong stays with her until her own death in 1972. Deokhye dies in 1989. After that, the Yi family continues to exist, but without a state, without a crown, without a clear political role. Later, succession disputes only make clearer what was left. Not power, memory, and the question of who is allowed to carry it. Deokhye came home. Only home did not come back.